of everyone's time. So we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Tim Williams. I'm the one of your Master of Ceremonies for our wonderful webinar, and thank you for joining us. I am the Government Affairs and Advocacy Officer with Food Bank for the Heartland. We are one of 6 food banks that work in collaboration with the Iowa Food Bank Association. I'll kick it over really quickly to my other Master of Ceremony for today to introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Barb Prather. I am the director of the Northeast Iowa Food Bank in Waterloo, serving 16 counties throughout the Northeast Iowa region, and I'm happy to be with you today.
Well, if we could go to the next slide. And then Linda Gorkow, our executive director of IFBA, is our slide girl. So we'll move forward. Linda, whenever you're ready, we're ready to move forward. Perfect, cool. So what are we doing today? What are we talking about? So we just want to really quickly go over some objectives for today. We've already introduced ourselves. We'll really quickly sort of go over the budget, what is called the Big Beautiful Bill, or the budget reconciliation process, what has happened, where we are now, and sort of where we're going. We'll review sort of our priority provisions within that bill, which really center around SNAP in these different sort of versions, and cost sharing, changes to work requirements or work reporting requirements in SNAP Ed. We'll talk through some initial calls to action, or what you can do today after you leave this space. We'll run through advocacy tools, excuse me, that you can also take with you. And then we really want to make sure that we leave a good chunk of this presentation today, for this time together, for questions and answers, so that you can ask some questions. If questions do come up at any point during the time, feel free to please pop them in the chat, and then we can get to them at the end. And there'll also be a time for you to come up and ask those questions as well. And then we'll go to the next slide.
So we're just going to start out with the big picture of what the overview of the budget reconciliation bill, or the big beautiful bill that passed the House at the end of May. And really there's 5 main points to what is included in that. And then of course we're going to dig down deeper into how this all affects the work that we do day in and day out throughout the food banks. The first thing is it extends the 2017 tax cuts on out. They were set to expire at the end of next year, but now it extends those out. It will increase. There will be an increase in defense and spending and immigration enforcement. There are some child tax credit adjustments. There's some climate and clean energy funding cuts. So things that are important to Iowa, there are some funding cuts related to that. And then, of course, the big things that we're really concerned about are the cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, which we know very well that when SNAP is cut, and when benefits are cut, numbers of people seen at food banks and food pantries increase. So on the Senate side of that, the Senate Agriculture Committee met last week, and they're proposing an overall cut to SNAP of $211 billion over 10 years. The House version that passed the end of May cuts $295 billion out of SNAP. The proposed, and I say proposed, Senate version, because it has not passed the Senate yet, and I need to be clear, it has not passed the Senate yet. Cuts are $211 billion just in SNAP. The House version would eliminate about 9.5 billion meals away take that away every year if SNAP is cut to this level. 9.5 billion meals will go away. To put that in perspective, um, the Feeding America network of food banks and food pantries and all the programs affiliated with the Feeding America network move about 6 billion pounds of food a year, excuse me. So this would take away an additional 9.5 billion meals from overall. So there's clearly would be a huge gap if these cuts went through. Iowa, can you put it back, Linda? No, go backwards. I wasn't done. The other thing I will point out is that Iowa would stand to lose about 10 million meals through SNAP if these cuts went through. In 2024, Iowa food banks distributed 61 million meals, up from a pandemic high of 51 million meals. And that's through our network. So that gives you some perspective of the difference that we would have to make up if these cuts went through. Okay, next slide.
So when we talk about cuts to SNAP, right, what are we specifically talking about? So the next two slides are going to hone in on, or next three slides really are going to hone in on three really specific areas regarding those cuts that we're talking to the SNAP program that total that full $211 billion. The biggest one and really the most egregious, the one that we are the most concerned about, is what we're calling the state cost sharing concept, or where the federal government is proposing to shift a portion of the implementation or the funding of SNAP onto the states. They're looking to do that cost shift in two specific areas. One is putting up a percentage of the actual SNAP benefits that a neighbor receives. A state would be responsible for a percentage of that cost based on the state's payment error rate. And they would also be shifting the administrative costs that a state is paying out. So currently on the administrative level, that split is down 50-50. That shift would change from 75 to 25, where the states would be responsible for 75% of the total administrative costs, and the federal government would pick up that 25%. Now that SNAP benefit shift is a little bit more complicated, as that payment error rate is sort of thrown into determining what level or what amount that state or a state would be responsible for. Currently, as proposed in the Senate package that was introduced last week, any state with a payment error rate of less than 6% would qualify for a 0% shift. Currently in Iowa, their payment error rate sits at a little over 5%, so therefore they would be at that 0% shift. But that range goes from anywhere from 0 to 15%, and Iowa's just on the hook. So just a little change in that payment error rate would then put that state, Iowa would be responsible for 5% of their costs, which is a little over 20 million. So right now, in that Senate package, we're looking at an approximately $13 million shift regarding that Iowa could be on the hook. It's really, really important to recognize the dramatic effect that this will have on the Iowa infrastructure and the Iowa budget moving forward. Iowa borrowed upwards of $900 million just in this past fiscal year in order to balance the state budget, which means there is zero wiggle room in order to take on new funding. So any amount of money that the states are now having to take on, they will have to look on how to make cuts on the back end in order to fulfill those new requirements on the sort of cost shifting sort of area. This, as proposed, would not take effect immediately. It would go into effect in 2028. So there is time, but it is very, very important to recognize the fundamental shifts that this would have in the overall implementation and funding of the program, not just here in Iowa, but really across the entire country. Go ahead, Linda. The second one we want to highlight is the sort of regulations tied to work or work reporting. So currently under SNAP, there are already work requirements that are applied to individuals who are considered able-bodied adults without dependents. And these individuals are subject to work reporting requirements where they have to submit verification of their work status. And if they do not meet those work requirements, then they, for upwards for 3 months or more, they then are then disqualified from the program and are removed from SNAP. So in the budget reconciliation package that was introduced or proposed in the Senate, this sort of able-bodied able-bodied adults without dependent work reporting requirement would be extended to new populations that have not been applied to, subject to those rules. The first group is is adults or parents or caregivers who are taking care of children age 10 or up, would now be subject to these work reporting rules. And so we are really concerned that any parent or caregiver that wouldn't be able to meet those rules would miss a reporting deadline, isn't able to complete their paperwork to show their proof, would then disqualify the whole household and would kick kids off of SNAP. The other, in addition to this new population, it also extends these work reporting requirements to a senior population and would extend that work reporting age range up from 18 to 54 to 18 to 65. And so it's a whole new group of people who have not been subject to these work reporting requirements that now would be subject to meet those requirements. And the next slide.
So one of the other big changes are the changes to SNAP Ed. And the best way to describe how SNAP Ed works through Iowa Extension Service, and particular to food banks, we partner with Iowa Extension to employ SNAP Ed coordinators throughout our network. There's 4 of them at 4 food banks. And their jobs are funded by SNAP Ed dollars. That money would go away. Those positions teach healthy eating. They teach pantries how to prepare food. They give recipes. They provide technical assistance, but they partner with the food banks to do this. Both bills, the one the Senate Agriculture Committee is proposing and the one that passed the House, eliminate this program. It's a great partnership for us because we can do nutrition education, and they have all of the skills, the background to really do this, and become partners in the community and a resource, not only for food banks, but food pantries. So if this goes through, it's really harmful to that partnership. And we want people to eat healthier. And so this is a good option to use those dollars to employ somebody who can help us do that. At this point, we're trying to educate both Senator Ernst and Senator Grassley as much as we can to make sure that SNAP Ed is saved as well. Okay, Linda. So what can you do? Your call to action, because the Senate could vote this week. This is how fast this is moving. Leadership is saying this has to be done by the 4th of July, or else nobody goes home for the 4th of July. And I believe that is very true. The food banks had a meeting this morning with Senator Ernst's office, shared the impact. And I think that's the biggest thing that you can do is highlight the cuts and highlight them, but highlight how it's affecting you. Highlight the fact that there's going to be more people at the doors of food pantries if we don't advocate for these really good programs that help a lot of people And yes, it's important to talk about no to the cost sharing, no to kicking kids off SNAP, all of that. But what in the end is the impact? The impact is more people will need food and will need help. And that means we have to ask the community for more help to be able to do what we do. All of us are already busy. We're seeing record numbers of people. So call Senator Grassley, call Senator Ernst, send them emails. I have been told they're turned off their phones after hours, so you can't leave messages. I've been told that. I don't know it as fact. But reach out to their local people as well. They have local offices all over Iowa. Reach out to those people. They're great people. Get to know them. Give them a tour of your organization. Tell them how you partner with the food bank to make ends meet. But I've never, I've done a lot of advocacy through my years, but this is probably the strongest and the loudest our food bank has been in a long time over cuts that are potentially coming. So I encourage all of you to reach out, not only in DC or in Iowa, but reach out to their local offices. If you hear that they're going to be at a local place, talk about the impact, tell the story. There's so many people that are impacted by this, by what could happen if SNAP is cut. We have the statistics to show when government supports go away, numbers at food banks and food pantries go up, and they continue to go up. Food insecurity is on the rise. The community has a response to it, but at some point the community may not be able to fully reach that. So it's so important that we advocate. We are going to do everything in our power to meet the needs of the future, but right now, please use your voice. Next slide, Linda. So some tools. Actually, this goes back to you, Tim. Sorry.
No, share all the tools. So really want to make sure that you have some tools that you can take away. And this is a perfect time for this question in chat. Can we receive some talking points to send to our senators? Absolutely, right? So one, we will share out after we're done today, some good key talking points about those three big bucket items. So about the aspects of budget reconciliations, particularly around SNAP, that we have concerns, so that can direct on how you frame or talk about things. Really some key tools or resources that you can take away or do some deep diving in once you leave here too, is thinking through looking at IFBA's website where we have some stuff housed. And also, if you are unsure who your advocacy lead is at whatever your food bank is, to reach out or post something in the chat so that you can get in contact with your local advocacy lead at your specific food bank to see how you can get connected on additional ways. Feeding America is also, it can be a really good resource regarding federal updates and also just some data regarding overall food insecurity, both in Iowa, but then also across the country. I'm going to pop a link into the chat here that will cover and sort of shows a study that's called Map the Meal Gap, which is recently updated at the end of, or in May, that highlights the overwhelming and growing need across Iowa and across the country. And that can be a good tool to sort of frame any thinking too that you have. Next slide, Linda. So just as Barb said, things are moving so fast, too fast, to be honest with you. So the vote in the Senate could happen this week or next week, and the goal is to have it on the president's desk before July 4th, which means if they vote on it this week or next week, it would then move back to the House, where they are expected to do an up-down vote on whatever is passed out of the Senate. And if they vote that out of the House again, that's when it would pass or make it to the president's desk. So there is multiple, the time is every day to make those phone calls in order to voice your concerns and give your perspective on all of this sort of stuff. again, talk to your fellow advocates and friends, and follow your local food bank and Feeding America on social media. We are all trying to update things as fast as possible, but sometimes the internet is one of the best ways to find out how things are happening or when they're moving. And social media can be a good resource. And we are a trusted source. And so if you're not following your food bank already, I encourage you to do so, as we will be posting timely updates on some key action timelines as well.
Yeah, the other thing that I will add before we go into Q&A is if write a letter to the editor. I mean, I realize time is short, but they do get printed. I've written some, or the food bank has written some opinion pieces, but write a letter to the editor. That's just another way to get your voice heard. If you're in a local community that has a local radio station, call them up and talk to them about it. If you feel uncomfortable doing that, reach out to your food bank, your local Feeding America food bank, and they will help you through that or do it for you. We just need to get voices and calls made to show the impact of these cuts and how they will affect everybody's community.
So it's with that, want to open it up for any questions, comments, concerns that anyone may have. Feel free to pop them in the chat, or you are more than welcome to come off mute and ask your question if you prefer.
I'll just reiterate the talking point sheets. Yes. Contact your local food bank, go to their Facebook page. I know the Northeast Iowa Food Bank has lots of information. We have an advocacy page on our website, neifb.org, that has talking points. But yeah, reach out to them and they'll get that to you. So thank you, Carol, for sharing the local senator numbers, because you're right, you get a recording or they don't let you leave voicemail in DC. So contact your local people. And the other thing, one of the other things as I think about it that you can do, if you know other advocates for other organizations, reach out to them too, because they always have contacts. The more people that we can get to call and make noise, the better off we hopefully will be. Does anybody else have questions? So with the revised $211 billion proposed cut to SNAP over 10 years, what does that translate to lost meals? I have not seen that updated stat yet. Have you, Tim?
No, I think because things are moving so fast, it's unclear what that sort of full meal number would be, just because um, it just hasn't been fully determined. But I do think leaning on that House version that it could be as dramatic as that 9.6 billion meals, right, is a good talking point and something that is, I think, very appropriate to lead with in a conversation. Is that there's past legislation that would cut 9.6 billion meals from um, the that we would lose, or that would not be, that neighbors across the country would not get. Um, and to emphasize that with your senators is that any loss in or reduction in meals is inappropriate, and not something we should be talking about, and lean on what has been passed out of the House. Yeah.
I have a question.
Go
Yep, go
ahead.
ahead.
Hi, this is Senator Art State here from Cedar Rapids. Just wondering if Representative Ashley Henson had indicated to you, or if you'd spoken with her about her final vote on this bill once it comes back?
I have not. We are reaching out to try and get a meeting with her. I'm gonna, Kim or Aaron from HACAP, can you come off mute? Have you had any, since the vote, had a conversation with her?
Hi, Art. This is Kim from HACAP. We have not had any recent conversations, but as Barb said, we're trying to get a meeting set up with someone from their team to kind of understand what that current stance has been and to share the most recent information that we have about that. So if we do make contact, we can certainly let you know, Art. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Kim. I think it's important that she weigh in on this with her
Mhm.
reasons.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a good with a follow-up question from Aaron in the chat is saying, should we only contact senators or should we also reach out to House members and their respective staffs? This inevitably, or this will be going back to the House. And so it is never too early to start re-engaging with your House members regarding their position and how they will vote moving forward and to encourage them to not support this bill. Um, while that timeline or the goal is July 4th, I think the more conversations and the more that we can delay is helpful. And so any way that you can have those conversations now is always helpful. And I saw something about we've heard a form that would be available for reference for drafting a letter to senators. I know we've got some template information or stuff, particularly in our collaboration and partnership with Feeding America too, if that would be helpful to share out. That gives you a guide on what you could share if you wanted to do like an email or anything like that, that could be distributed.
Do we know how many SNAP recipients have access to computers to get through the state of Iowa work requirements and documentation? That is a great question. And no, I don't have that number. But that's a great thing to share. When you talk and you advocate is that a lot of low-income people do not have access to computers in their home. And how are they supposed to apply if they can't access the services?
And there's
Do we have the dollar amount of how this would affect families' food stamps they currently receive? That's a great question. You bring up a good point. So one of the things that we've heard loud and clear from the senator's office is they're very concerned about what the Thrifty Food Plan did when it was enacted in the last administration. So I know they're doing a lot of work to really how do I want to say this? Do away with that. Right now, every October, SNAP benefits adjust to inflation through the Thrifty Food Plan. My understanding is most of them, a lot of that is going to be rolled back and will be eliminated. So if you were getting $40, you're going to still get $40, whether inflation goes up or not. And I don't know if Tim, you can weigh in on more.
yeah. So
Or
I think so. So in the immediate, right, is that there's no real there wouldn't be an effect on the physical dollar amount that folks are receiving based on those Thrifty Food Plan adjustments because they made a large adjustment in 2021, but moving forward Congress is skeptical of making those adjustments based outside of a general inflation cost. It's also important to note that in the Senate package, the bill language sort of states that the agriculture secretary can sort of renegotiate or rethink what that Thrifty Food Plan is composed of. So when we talk about the Thrifty Food Plan, it's essentially a grocery basket of items that a traditional family of four would need in order to build a healthy, nutritious grocery or meal. And then they take the price of all of that and do a bunch of math that I'm not even going to pretend to understand, and then that calculates your benefits. And so if they then change the makeup of that grocery basket, it could have an effect on what those benefit dollars look like. It's way too early to think through what would be in that grocery basket, but any sort of prescription or allocation of that makeup of that 30 food plan could alter out the physical dollar amount. But the concern is that because there are cuts in other aspects of the program, that the state would then be placed, or the burden would be placed on the states to make cuts in other ways that could result in a reduction of benefits, a lower eligibility percentage, you name it, and that could result in a lower amount based on activities that the state would make. And that's if I had a crystal ball, which I don't. Any other questions?
Tim, I have a question. The attendant that asked about the form letter, and you mentioned there were some resources. Is there somewhere, because I don't know that we'll be able to like send a mass email out to everybody, is there somewhere we could post that folks we could give the link to now that we could put something like that they could modify for their own use through the IFBA website
Yeah,
possibly?
that's
Or
that's the natural place for me. So I think if we could just post it on the website. Also, I think you could, in taking some of the talking points that we'll send out as well as a follow-up to this webinar, you can use that as a framing to sort of think through how to compose your own email as well. I think what's really impactful, what could be impactful, is to take some of these guiding talking points and put it in your own voice, in your own language too, because it will land a little bit better in an elected official's inbox, because they won't see it as it just being a copy paste form letter. Everything and anything helps, but just some additional ways to get around that sort of mass email sent out to the group.
Yeah, and then it's also important to share a story of who's receiving your services too, and understand what the story is behind them. And I know a lot of you have those stories. So any of those effects you can share would be great as well.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I will leave you with one thought. First, if you have any questions, please email us at advocacy@iowafba.org, and we can get you to the right food bank or the right person too. Visit us at iowafba.org to sign up for advocacy mailing lists and whatnot. And I would leave you with a thought. If you are thinking, or you ask yourself, should I make this phone call, or should I call this person, or should I send this email? The answer is always yes. And if you ask yourself, well, I did it today, do I need to do it tomorrow? The answer is yes. The goal here is to make as much noise as possible, and to show that Iowa is very concerned about how both the House and Senate are approaching budget reconciliation, and really how they are making very dramatic cuts to SNAP. So now's the time, tomorrow's the time, every day is the time to really take action.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Tim. Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us today. Please reach out to your local food bank if you need resources or help. We will get that letter posted, probably on the IFBA website, and we'll share a link to that as well. But we appreciate everything that you do every day to help fight food insecurity in Iowa.